Let's try this out really fast.
$12.43. Currently no data. Stream is healthy. Good.
It's good.
All right. Okay, so we're on live.
Yeah.
Oops.
I got it, Mom. Oh. You listen.
There. Okay.
So we're on live.
Still delayed.
Still delayed, but I don't think it was as bad as before.
No.
Bring it up and see if.
Well, it was really high before.
All right, let's get ourselves set up to move and.
That's okay. I'll just turn it over. Oh, there's a cute dog video. Sad day. All right, people are on. I have to put up the chat. I forgot.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, Auntie Kelly's here.
All right. Shalom, Kelly. Are we all settled in yet?
Yeah.
Everything set up?
David says hello too.
Shalom, David.
Oh no. Oops. Streaming. I'll go back. It's pausing again.
Yeah, we're. All right, can we? I don't know how you want to do this. Put my face in the corner so we can see if it freezes up or not.
I can't do that.
Okay, never mind.
See, this is fine now. It's back to normal, but it's not having that little
Okay.
glitch.
I'm not moving.
Oh, just kidding. Well, no, it's delayed still.
Huh.
But it still has that. Oh yeah, it's back.
Okay.
It's being finicky.
Yeah, not at all happy.
What? We can. So
Yeah, we're noticing that. We're trying to figure this out. Good Shabbat breakfast. There you go. Yeah, I'm doing mine. Drinking my breakfast. Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Let me know, is the video still freezing up? We made a few adjustments in the bit rate and so on, and need to find out if that's too low, because what YouTube or ODS or whatever that is, OBS, recommended was much lower than what it was set, so we moved it way down. And I don't know if the bit rates are so slow now that you're not getting much of any video or sound. So let me know if you hear me. Okay. Are things moving?
Auntie Kelly says getting periodic freeze frames, but
Oh.
can hear audio clearly without pause. That's good, at least.
Okay, that's really the part that matters anyways.
The audio.
Yeah. Okay. Let's give it another minute or two for people to file in the room. And then we'll pick up. Shalom, Tara. Shabbat shalom.
I'm gonna go finish my breakfast.
Go finish your breakfast. I think I might be able to survive here. Maybe. Okay. Okay, if the video is a little bit frumpy right now, that's okay. As long as the sound is what counts, because the only thing that's really moving with the video is my talking head, which it doesn't matter if I'm freeze frame. Let's see now. I need to find.
What are you looking for?
Oh, I'm there. I'm just. How do I get a full screen on this rather and lose all that? We're just gonna go with it the way it is.
Why is it so small? There you go.
Oh, close enough.
Okay.
Close enough. That'll do. That'll do. Okay. Let's see. Let me explain a few things as we go through. You should have the bulletin up, and you should be uploaded to the website or to Facebook. I really don't keep much track of what's going on over there. The weekly bulletin should be up, as well as a couple of handouts, and we'll get to those as we go. And also, I already have the handout put up for Galatians 1c, the third session in first chapter Galatians, which we'll do on Wednesday. Okay, so today is 1 ER, the first day of ER 5780, otherwise known as April 25, 2020. So today is Rosh Chodesh, and also today is the 14th of the Omer. Excuse me. And amongst the handouts is a handout on Messiah and the Omer, showing a connection. It's the Omer in that write-up is more focused on the very first one that's brought at Yom HaBikurim, but it's still a nice read, still a nice explanation. And so that's a handout for you to look at. And also Rosh Chodesh come up. Okay, so today is the new moon, the head of the month. Rosh Chodesh literally means head of the new, head new. Okay, so it means the head of the month, even though none of the titles are quite right, because to translate it absolutely exactly, it doesn't make sense to us. Head new. So it's the head of the month or the new moon, and there are special readings attached to that. You can get to those at your leisure. Okay, for today's reading, we have a double portion, both Tazria and Metzorah. So if you wondered, you'll notice if you hadn't caught that, on the right column of the Parsha schedule, you have a big old bracket on the weeks that you have a double reading. And so if you go by the date, that's on the right column, you'll see that there's two separate readings, and so that's a double portion, and that's why we have double portion put in here. Don't be too crazy. Every time we run into a double portion, there are various different traditions and norms that lots of other people do. None of them are the same. As to which reading you go with, and how do you mix and match the two readings. If you want to have just one single Torah portion, one single Haftarah portion, one single Brit Hadashah portion, how you go about doing that, there's a lot of variation. And so in order to cast a broad scope as possible, this time I think I included both readings. And I think in this one, this first double reading, we have one set out of 2 Kings, but there's a different chapter in the second set of 2 Kings. So I just put that one on the next one. No, sorry. Never mind. I had something else in mind. Okay, so all right. So now we're doing our announcements, and continually pray for the peace of Jerusalem. This is always up on our bulletin because it should be one of those forefront things in our mind to always be praying that God bless His people and to protect them, and that true peace, which is not just a lack of war, but also includes wholeness and completeness and health. And then, I'm sorry, I said 1D and 1C in Galatians. Actually, it's 1D coming up. So, and so we'll pick up on that on Wednesday. Okay, second side, back page. We double side print this, is another double portion this next week, Achremot and Kedoshim. And so you have a pile of readings there, which is fine. You have all week to get it done anyway, so it doesn't hurt to do that. Upcoming events. Okay, this week, Monday and Tuesday, April 28 and 29 is Yom HaZikaron, which is Israel Memorial Day, and also Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, 28 and 29. There is a handout that's uploaded that covers these days, and you can pull that down and get an idea of what's in there. Okay. And that'll be the end of things going on for the month of April. We had a busy, not kind of month because everything's shutting down. All the big stuff that we had planned just didn't happen. So keep that in prayer that we can get back to normal soon. On one hand, it's kind of nice not having to get up early and drive all the way out to West Covina. But on the other hand, I miss seeing your faces, and it's so much more comfortable communicating face-to-face than online. So let's pray that we get back to normal soon. Okay, next month you have Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni on May 8th, Friday evening, is second Passover. So the way God had commanded in Torah, that if for whatever reason you missed that first Passover, you get a makeup day here 1 month later. So this is your makeup. You can keep your Passover and do it on that night. Okay. Lag BaOmer is the 33rd of the Omer, and that's a traditional holiday. And next week or so, I will get a handout on that for Lag BaOmer, also for Yom Yerushalayim. And then towards the end of the month, on May 23rd, is Rosh Chodesh Sivan, the new moon for the month of Sivan. Now, if, and I say if, circumstances permit, if we get back to meeting face-to-face, we will have Shavuot evening, May 30 on Saturday evening. That's also a Sabbath day. You don't do any regular work therein. And we will continue on to the 31st, Sunday at noon, Shavuot day at the park. We've established a tradition a couple years back. Instead of meeting on a Sunday day and trying to balance our time versus the church where we rent, because it's a fairly large church and they take up all the space. So it's better that we're not there in the morning. But we decided, and we found out it's really kind of fun to have a picnic in the park on Shavuot day. We bring out the instruments and the musicians, and we basically do a request day, and we just make music and hang out and chat and eat food. The most important things you have to do in this world, especially to exemplify our freedom in Messiah. We get to meet, we get to sing and worship, to study His Word, and have food. So those important things. All right. Okay. Let me see if I can get back to where I can see the chat on this thing. All right, that's not it. Okay, where do I get back to the live stream? Last time I tried to find it, I just closed everything. So I don't want to do that again. Abigail went down to get some food. Yeah, I'm done with the bulletin. I want to move off to the live stream again, except I don't see.
Easy peas.
Oh, there we are. The one on the left, right?
Yes, sir. Do you want the chat?
Yeah, and then
Go click the internet again. Go to this one.
Okay. Cool. Okay, shalom, Stella. Okay. Yeah, that's Yafa, that's all right. It's my fault for getting him out to you late. Don't worry about it. Just get him up as soon as you can. Oh, Ken's dad. Okay, something for to add to our prayer list there. That Ken's dad dialysis. Okay. Yeah, let's learn our lesson. Okay. All right, let's get the Parsha discussion rolling. I need actually it's over here also too, isn't it?
What? The Bible gateway?
Yeah. There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, beginning Leviticus 15. We talked a little bit about the basic theme of the readings. Basically, it's in a short word, it would be clean versus unclean. How to determine it. Also, as a sub-subject to that, just the whole overall context of holiness. There are reasons why God commanded clean and unclean, and that some people would be separated from the camp. And we know this because God said so. But for people who make the arguments with people who think that Bible is anti-science, we have to point out the obvious, that God knew all this long before science figured it out, that there are such things as infectiousness, and that God commanded certain things should be kept away from everybody else so as to not spread infection. Okay, so let's go ahead, and if you have questions, comments, rebukes, put them up in the comments. We tried making a change in the bit rate on the video, I guess, which is maybe why it's so choppy, to try to shorten the delay from the time that I speak to the time that you hear it, because it was about a minute, and I'm hoping it's a little bit shorter than that now. We have to see, have to research it a little bit more. It's one of the reasons we're a little bit slow getting restarted with this segment, because we were busy watching a quick YouTube video on how to set up a live chat, and so it's sort of halfway adjusted at this point. Okay, so I'll just dive into it, and we will, when you have questions, comments, and rebukes, just go ahead and type them in. Okay, so the text starts off with any man who has a discharge, and this is sort of a general statement. We have more specific commandments as we go to various other kinds of discharges that a man may have. This is more of a general one, and this would be more like a pussy sore, or maybe a developing scab. What I kind of like about all this is we actually have a lot of detail in this. In that we have a lot of detail of a lot of different options, and so under such conditions, he's clean. In other conditions, he's unclean. And if he's unclean, he has to, basically be in quarantine light. Washes himself in his clothes, then come back in a week. And if things are worse, then he's definitely got a problem. If it got better, he doesn't have a problem. If it stays the same, you're into another quarantine for a week. So, and the interesting thing is, long before people found out about microbes and germs, in verse 4, chapter 15, oops, this is not the right size. Oh. That's why I wasn't reading so easily. Okay. Okay. It's interesting. Well before there was science, God said, anybody who has this condition, nobody else get near them. No one touch them. No one, don't sit on his bed. Don't hang out in his place. Just, if you have any, nowadays you're talking about water droplets and aerosol, and yet, God even mentions stuff like that. So, let me see if I can adjust these things. All right. And then we double check our comments. Okay. Metzora, or leprosy, there's a suggestion in the text as how is this linked with Lashon Hara. there's a suggestion in the text. However, it's not plainly stated, I don't think, that God says, because you have spoken evil of someone, you're going to get this disease. I don't think it comes out quite that plainly. David's got a good comment on both are infectious. Okay, both cause isolation. Yeah. Kofefi mug. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Okay. So back to where I was at. So there's a lot of care in God's instructions about not getting in touch with or not getting in touch with or having contact with somebody who's in this condition. Now, so when he has pronounced clean on the 8th day afterwards, he's to take for himself 2 doves, 2 young pigeons. Actually, he's set aside for 7 days, and on the 8th day he comes back and is confirmed. 2 young pigeons, and they're offered, one as a burnt offering, and the one as a sin offering. And so, the Kohen will make atonement. Atonement there is kofar, means a covering for him on account of this discharge. So here you have a hint. It's plainly stated in the text, but it's not plainly stated in the description that there seems to be a connection between sin and these conditions, but it's not explained what is the sin, what is the condition that causes, what is the thing that causes this skin condition or other conditions. Okay, yeah, Miriam, it's obvious. She spoke evil of Moses, and yeah, in that case, it's obvious. She misspoke. She acted against Moses, and so she was, turned into a leper. But it's not stated here as a regular explanation. So that's what I'm getting at. It's, you can infer it from that, but it could be a one-off. I don't want to say for sure that leprosy is the sign of someone who is speaking evil without reason. Okay? Yeah. That's President Trump used the word kofefi to suggest just a disagreement or an argument, a fight or something like that. So I wasn't sure. I still haven't heard a really satisfactory explanation of that word. So when he said, "Oh, coffee mug," okay, you let kofefi mug. I thought you were looking at my mug, and I'm thinking, what's combative about that? But rather a coffee mug. Okay, I'm sorry. I should learn to read the text more carefully before I comment. Okay, so let's move on. It's interesting, just in the whole idea of cleanliness. You have certain things that certain discharges that make somebody unclean. Not a sinful kind of unclean, but just a state of unclean. Okay, and so hello, Jonathan. Shalom. So if a man has an emission when it comes to making love with his wife, when a woman has her discharge, he's unclean. He's supposed to wash, and he's going to be unclean till evening. Sorry, that's King's English. The woman has a regular discharge of blood, she's going to be now the complete Jewish Bible uses the Hebrew word nidah, but in English it's usually translated as separation for 7 days. So from the time that it begins to the time her discharge is over, she's in a state of uncleanness, plus the 7 days after the discharge is over. Again, the reason for that, of course, in God's reckoning, blood is far more infectious than everything else that appears. Okay, except maybe a confirmed case of leprosy that is now pronounced healed. You're still down for 7 days while you're waiting for the confirmation on that. But the idea is that blood is much more infectious, and again, this is way ahead of science. This is forgive me if I keep mentioning that, but this is one of those fantastic things you learn in reading God's Word. You can look at this and go, oh, this is a whole bunch of unnecessary rules. Nobody does this any longer because it's not necessary any longer. We have showers, we have soap, we have, whatever. And nonetheless, the truth is still the truth. This has to do with corporate infection. Now, it's kind of interesting that as you go through this, in the man's case, he just washes with water and he's unclean until sundown. But in the woman's case, she brings 2 doves or 2 pigeons, and one is a sin offering and the other is a burnt offering. So again, you have sin involved. And the only thing I can think of is it harkens all the way back to Eve. Okay? Where the whole body, it goes back to Eve and what we call, what we describe as the original sin. And that has to do with her cycle. Okay? So in a way, I don't like the concept of saying this woman is sinful just because she had her period. But I think it has to do with sort of a reminder of that original sin. And so you bring a sin offering, not that she is sinful, that woman, but because of that original sin that prompted this whole thing, this whole cycle happening in a woman. Okay? So verse 31, the maftir. In this way you will separate the people of Israel from their uncleanness, so they will not die in a state of uncleanness for defiling my tabernacle, which is there with them. So, this makes a question then. How do we Linda, how is a spot unclean, but the whole body covered clean? Oh, well, that's kind of interesting because the way I heard it used when I first heard it, it kind of gave the idea that it was a word for a conflict or an argument. Oh well. Okay. So, okay. You're talking about the a spot of leprosy being unclean, but once the whole body has gone through the whole skin being clean. I think it has to do, if you read the what follows after that is a discussion is if the skin's all white, then it's clean. I think what happens is, and I'm not medical so I don't know for sure if this is really the case, but if the leprosy has run its full course on the skin of the person, it's no longer infectious. Unless you get a skin break, which is also contained in in the our Torah portion that if there's a skin break and you have raw skin showing underneath the white skin, then it opens up again that infectiousness. Okay, so I think that's what we're talking about. When the spot's there, the infectiousness is there, but when that has run its whole course, where the entire body is just white skin, then it's no longer infectious. Okay, and that person can come back and be part of society, even though, you just have to keep watch on the condition of your skin. Okay, so back to our verse 31 in Numbers 15. In this way you will separate the people of Israel from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in a state of uncleanness for defiling my tabernacle which is there with them. So here's the thing. In modern times, in modern times, do we have a tabernacle within which we gather, where being a state of uncleanness would be problematical? Okay, yeah, you're right, David. Tzarat was one of Moses' signs. In that case, though, he showed it and then he was cleansed of it immediately, and there was no mention of a 7-day cooling off period after that at that time. This is in this telling. Now we have that detail added in. Yeah, I've seen that about a leprous Messiah. I'm not sure if they're talking about a physical one so much as a part of the descriptions of Mashiach ben Yosef, the suffering servant who dies. So he's getting the nickname as the leprous Messiah because he's the one that everyone turns away from and doesn't want him. Just like he would have a plague. Okay, so. Being in a state of uncleanness in defiling his tabernacle, okay, the place where everyone gathers to present themselves to God, okay. Some people say this is the local congregation, and I'm not sure. I don't think I like that description because our shul, I don't think stands up to the same description as the Mishkan, the presence of God. Although we have the presence of God with us, it's not the place that he's called, okay? So I'm not sure. Some people say that if you're in a state of uncleanness, you should not come to shul. And I'm not sure I like that idea. Because the way this reads to me, there's really not a penalty to being in contact with somebody who's unclean that matters at this point. Once a tabernacle is running or a temple is running, then within those, within that structure, I can see this would be carefully watched. But for us, I don't see it as our congregation meeting room is as lofty a location as God's tabernacle. That's my 2 cents on that anyways. Okay. Okay, let's see. See if I can find. There it is. One of the joys I have with working a computer. Come on, you can do it. Okay, it's clocking, trying to move over to 16. Okay. Remote. Okay. Okay, we'll do this Torah portion. Okay. So basically what we have in this is it begins with a reiteration of rules about how to do this right. And we see this in the writings of audio and video are pausing. Okay. Well, hopefully we can limp through this, and we'll try to fix this for Wednesday. Okay. So we chapter 16 we're going through essentially what is the instruction on how to do Yom Kippur. Okay. This is the Yom Kippur instructions. This chapter here is very useful when you're studying the book of Hebrews. Hebrews focuses a lot on the details of Yom Kippur, and so you have it here. You have the the goat that's to the Lord, and you have the Azazel, the scapegoat, which is taken out of the camp. And in tradition, it is stated that even the Azazel, the goat that was taken out, wasn't left to chance that maybe that goat's going to want to find its way back into the city, and because that's representing the sins of the people being taken all the way out and disappearing, so they would take the goat out to a place away from the city and chuck it over a cliff face so that it won't come back. Yeah, that's pretty rough on the goat, and very disappointing, because you're thinking, hey, I get this piece of scarlet on my horn and I'm being walked out. Hey, I get to go free. Sorry about that. So this is dealing with the details of what goes on in Yom Kippur in this chapter. Yeah, we'll just try to make this work for now. We made some adjustments, and I'm not sure if the adjustments helped at all. So, okay, let's anything on this chapter? Okay, we have more details about bringing the animal into the camp. There's a reason for this. It's a little more clear in other places. Basically, God is directing people to bring even their food to be slaughtered at the tabernacle, in addition to all their regular sacrifices. That you have there was always a temptation for Israel to go and chase after the other gods and sacrifice things, it's really not right to say other gods, the things that pretend to be gods that aren't, the things that people teach as if they were God, but they're not. And the children of Israel had a tendency to go chase after those things. And so what they may have been doing at that time is they would take their food, walk it over to the local pagan temple and slaughter it there as a sacrifice to that pagan god. Then you take your food home, and from there. So God is saying, even at this point, putting the idea ahead, and it gets a little, it comes out again later. This is repeated somewhere else, further down the road that you're not to take your food and slaughter it just anywhere, but bring it to the tabernacle and do it there. I think to keep people from turning to the other convenient places to present a sacrifice, which are all the wrong places, which are to the pagan gods. Okay. Okay. In verse 8, I don't want to bring this up. When someone from the community of Israel or one of the foreigners living with you offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, okay, without bringing it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to sacrifice to Adonai, that person is to be cut off from his people. Now, that's pretty much straightforward. However, here's the thing. Modern Judaism and Pharisaism of the day of Yeshua were extremely anti-Gentile. Okay. And here we have, if a foreigner living with you offers a sacrifice or an offering, okay? So what does this mean? That means that even the foreigner who hasn't converted to being Jewish and hasn't been circumcised to be part of Israel is allowed to bring a sacrifice, okay? Was he allowed into the tabernacle, into the grounds? No, but he can bring it to the entrance and have it done for him. Give it to the priest and have it done for him. Okay. Okay, and this rule of the foreigner living under the same rules as Israel, okay, what does this mean? That means that Acts 15 was absolutely spot on correct, that Gentiles are acceptable to the community of God as Gentiles. There are certain rules, okay, not to eat any kind of blood.
Hold on.
What's that?
It's Barbara.
We're all locked up?
No, you're on the wrong reading for next week.
Okay, no, this is a double portion.
Doctor?
Yeah, it's a double portion.
It's a double portion, here's that. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Doctor?
Okay, yeah, they're... No, it's a double portion. On my list, Tazria and Metzorah is a double portion. That's what I planned.
Do you want to talk to Barbara?
Well, no, I'm talking online now. Okay. Yeah, if you're using the Flame Foundation reading list, it's a double portion. We're reading two sections today.
We're reading two sections, it said.
Let's see if I can get this back up to where...
So it's next week that we were...
Today's the 25th, right?
Hold on.
Okay.
Is your year correct?
No, that's right.
Huh?
There's 2 portions.
No, it's this year. Okay, can I get back to my thing?
Okay. He keeps saying... Hold on a second, let me go this way.
Okay, good. We're good. Okay. Oops, I'm still looking at the wrong thing. That's why I didn't look right. There we go. Okay. So, David, no, you can't take your sacrifice to the Vatican. I'm sorry. I know that's a big disappointment. It's really what you wanted to do. But yeah. Yes, Jonathan, that's exactly the point. The Gentiles to be acceptable in the community of Israel, even if they don't make a conversion, even if they don't make a circumcision, they're still to be accepted as one of the members The only qualification is if we had a temple or a tabernacle, they would not be allowed to enter there until they completely go through the whole process. Okay. Okay. Blood is reserved for God, that nobody eats blood. And anyone eating an animal that dies naturally or is torn by wild animals, either a citizen or foreigner, is to wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. Again, this is an unclean thing. This is a bacteria, microbe thing. Now, just a little bit of Yiddishkeit. The word there for torn in Hebrew, in Yiddish, is said to be treif, and that's actually the Hebrew word also, treif. And you hear that word from time to time as a reference to something that's unkosher, okay, something that's not kosher. So so treif, even though it means torn, is in modern parlance meaning somewhat unclean, or mean torn. It means torn, but it also means unclean or not kosher. Okay. Okay. Everyone's saying hello to you, Ellen. Right. It's a double portion. Do we not have the same reading list?
Yes, she said 16 is supposed to be of next week.
Okay. The one I'm looking at has both these portions in this week, and then the next week out is also a double portion. So, okay, let it go. Let's continue on. Okay. Chapter 18. Okay. You're making me going back and forth and back and forth. Okay. On mine, Tazria and Achremot are both Metzorah, infected one, is 15. Okay, you know what? I am way ahead of myself. You're right. Achremot is next week. I was looking at the two double portion, and you kept saying Achremot, and it slowly dawned on me. That is next week's portion. All right, we got a commentary up ahead on next week. All right. So my apologies. All right, so we're going to go to I have to keep going back to this anyways. Metzorah, Achremot. Okay. So Metzorah. Okay, here we are. I keep looking at the wrong one. Okay. Actually, what I need to do is let's do this. Okay. Tazria Metzorah. Okay. I had my brain in the wrong spot. Sorry. Okay. Melachim Bet, 2 Kings. It's 7, right? Second Kings 4. Okay. Yeah, I think we read. Okay. Second Kings 4. Come on. All right, there we are. Sorry about that. Come on. 42. Okay, that was from. Where did you do this one? Okay. Kings 4:42. Okay, that's what I did. Okay. 5:19. Weggevalt. Okay, sorry about that. Need to work out a better method. Okay. So a man came from Baal Shalishish, bringing 20 loaves of bread and made from the barley first fruits. Okay, to give you an idea, the barley first fruits, this should be dedicated to the priests. And Elisha says, give this to the people. Okay. Being that it was wholly dedicated to the priest, makes it very, very special. But the people were hungry, and so Elisha said, give it to the people to eat, and little comment of not quite understanding. How am I going to serve 100 men? And nonetheless, God made it multiplied to the point where where they were all able to eat. Now, this is interesting because this is a precursor to one of Messiah's miracles. In fact, he did it twice, taking a small amount of food and feeding a large group of people. He did it twice. It's part of the discussion that part of the instruction that God that Yeshua did double the miracle of Elisha. And so it's kind of interesting. Now we have chapter 5. It's one of my favorite stories. Naaman. I think he was from Jamaica. Naaman. Commander of the king of Aram's army. Great reputation, except he was a leper. That's Arat. Okay. Now, this is a little bit of a lesson for us because a captive girl who was from Israel was carried away from Israel and became a servant to Naaman's wife. And she says, and she says, I wish my Lord could go to the prophet in Shomron. He can heal his tza'arat. So Naaman went to his boss and said, I can get healed if I go down to what this girl said. And, so go. All right. So he took a rather large gift to the king and a letter saying, please heal me. King gets upset because the king has no idea how to do that. But then Elisha sends a messenger to the king and rescues the king from this circumstance and says, "Send me, I'll take care of it." Now, one of the interesting... Sorry, there's commentary running by here and I'm missing it. Yeah, it's a little bit of miscommunication in this case. Part of it is his own thought. Now remember, this guy is a general. He's a high-ranking person. He's very accomplished. He's good at what he does. You usually don't get people who rise to that level don't usually get there by being laid back. Okay, they're get out of my way and I'll get it done kind of a person. And so this is the mentality of Naaman, and this is what makes the entertaining part about this story. Okay, so he shows up at the door, and it's kind of interesting that Elisha doesn't even go out to talk to him, doesn't recognize his presence, just sends out a messenger and says, "Go wash in the Yarden 7 times. That's it. Nothing. Now, here's a guy that's used to being treated, he's not the king, but he's being treated as if he is the king because he's the general of the king's army. And, he has power and authority over many, many, many people. And so he's also used to being treated as somebody who's really, really important. Okay? So, here's this guy with this attitude. I'm expecting you to treat me with all kinds of, as if I'm really great and really something. And I don't even get to talk to the prophet. I only talk to the servant, a messenger. And then he goes off on, what do you mean washing this Yarden? Yuck. There are much nicer rivers where I live. How come I can't do that? And he storms off, and his own servants finally come up, and you can tell they're nervous because I guess when this guy's mad, people die. Because the first thing they said to him is "Father," and it's kind of like, yeah, deal kindly with me just for bringing this up. And they their counsel is really, really wise. Is if the prophet had asked for something really, really difficult, would you not have jumped to do it? So why not something super easy? And what does this establish for us? Okay, one, it establishes that sometimes it's easier to do a bit difficult task than it is to do an easy task when it comes to serving God, because we think, I don't get accolades for doing this. People don't know I do that, and people aren't running up to me to tell me how wonderful I am because of stuff I'm doing that nobody else knows about. And this is what this guy's looking for, and he didn't get that, so he's mad. And finally, they reasoned with him and says, "Hey, if you'd have done something hard, you'd have done it. So why not try something easy?" So finally, the guy goes back and dips in the Jordan 7 times, and he's healed. Okay, now he goes back to the prophet and says, "I have a wonderful, wonderful parting gifts to give you because you've done something really nice for me." And the prophet refuses. Elisha refuses, which again has got to be annoying to this general because he can't, enrich the guy who healed him, and so he can brag about enriching somebody, for having done something. And so, and we know from the story that Gehazi kind of falls into the greed thing and chases after the general and says, you can give me some stuff. And then, of course, Gehazi becomes a leper himself as a result of seeking a reward for something God has done. Okay? And that's kind of our there's a number of little lessons in this, and that's one of them. You know, one is you know, among them are, you know, something simple that God asks for us to do is can have huge effects, and that you know, if we're that kind of go-getter that would be so happy to do something really difficult but can't be bothered with something small, there's a lesson in this. Okay, you can still get great results far beyond what you think you're going to have. Yeah, it's probably torn between what he's learning from Elisha and what he learned from the world. Yeah, that's true. You know, and so our lesson for this is to not get distracted by the yearnings for the ways of the world. Okay. Yeah, the cool thing, there's a lot of different things that get handled in this one story. In one, and thank you, I passed this up. When Naaman goes to the king of Israel and hands the letter over, and his king's letter says, you know, I sent this guy to you so you can heal him of his leprosy. You know, it's interesting that the king of Israel, who was not known as, none of them were good in that they did not walk in God's ways, but apparently this guy knew to not, you know, to not take on himself this position. Can he heal like only God can heal? He knows that he doesn't reach that level. Okay. However, he receives it the wrong way. He's receiving this as a challenge, intending for him to fail, so the king of Aram can have an excuse to go to war against him or something. And so he receives it the wrong way. But he does make that obvious statement that only God can heal. And this is really useful for when, you know, really useful when the story gets out that the guy did heal this leper, that it tells everybody that God is real and God needs to be taken seriously. Okay? One other thing I think is really cute is this general comes back and finally gets a chance to speak to Elisha, or at least get a message back and forth with Elisha. He offers a gift. Elisha says no. Okay, you know, at least then, you know, let me bring a couple of loads of dirt from Israel home with me. And this has always seemed a little confusing to me because why? But one of the things, it seems kind of interesting, is in a synagogue, a proper synagogue has the thought and the understanding that you're actually standing in Israel when you're in the synagogue during the services. So what he's doing then is kind of bringing a little bit of Israel back with him so he can pray to the Lord God, you know, sort of as it were within Israel. Okay. Then he's got one other thing, which is really kind of cute. You know, there's one other problem I got. You know, my master, the king, he likes me to go with him to hit the temple of his God, and he leans on my hand when he bows down in front of his king, which forces me to bow down also in that place. But listen, you know, please forgive, you know, may the Lord forgive me for doing this. It's my job. I don't have any choice in this. Okay? And so Elisha responds back, go in peace. Now this sets up a really interesting discussion, because does this mean that we can do the pagan thing as long as God knows that we, you know, really don't mean it? I don't think so. Rather, this is a very specific circumstance. Okay? You know, this is something that he had been doing, and he was concerned that, you know, his boss would think ill of him for not wanting to to help him up and help him down and up when he does his bowing in front of his pagan god. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And this is basically a one-off. There's really no other spot where we run into where we are let loose to do the pagan thing. Just because we're afraid of consequences. But I think, in part, there is something this general is going to do when he gets back to his home country that God wants to keep him alive and healthy for. And thus, we're going to pass on this for now. And it could be after a while he tells the king he doesn't want to do this any longer, and this is why. And he's going to be permitted. Okay. Okay, we do have textual evidence that Yeshua is indeed God. It's all one the same. And in fact, the doctrine of the Memra explains that, because Messiah at times appears to be as God and sometimes different. It's a conundrum that was not solved by the rabbis, but is obvious in the person of Yeshua. Okay, so Gehazi, decides to collect a little bit and becomes a leper as a result. All right, let me get to. Okay, 2 Kings chapter 7. I know this is kind of long this way, but 2 Kings 7:3. I have to remember how to do this. Okay, what is going on here? Something keeps canceling my... I'm so used to using the keypad, the number pad, and for some reason, when I'm switching back and forth between screens, the number pad's getting knocked out. Okay, starting at verse 3. Okay, and this is another great story. Okay, it sort of starts after a conversation, but we get this prior conversation at the end of this segment. So the 4 lepers. Oh, let me get this other thing up. The 4 lepers, and I like their reasoning. Okay, if we sit here, we're going to starve to death. If we go into the city, that's where the famine is. What's the benefit for us? So let's go and surrender to the army of Aram, and if they spare us and feed us, great, we live. If not, we're only going to die. So they got up, discover that everyone's disappeared. We know, the story explains that for the Lord had made the sound of an army, chariots and horses for the soldiers of Aram to hear, and he put them all in a serious panic. And the details of this are fascinating. Are fascinating because you have it gives you the details of somebody in total terror and panic. They don't pack up their stuff and calmly, walk out and ride their animals out, but rather they are so scared they run, and they're so scared they drop everything. They're so scared that they don't even pack anything up. Everything gets left behind. So So, and that's an amazing thing. That explains in the details just how panicked God made these people to be. This is pretty good work. Okay, and so so they ran away. They left everything behind, and we know from the story when the king sent chariots out to investigate, they followed them all the way to the Ardennes, and there was a trail of stuff all the way out because people were in such a panic. Whatever they were carrying, they started throwing away, so they can run faster. Okay, so the leprous guys went into one tent, ate and drank, took some stuff away and hid it. Went to another one and did it again. Then finally they're going, there's only so much you can eat at one time before you're finally thinking, okay, this is wonderful for us, but it's going to go bad for us if, everyone's going to find out in the morning. And if we don't tell everybody now, they're going to count us as ne'er-do-wells. And it's bad enough being outside the city because they're lepers, but they're going to be dead lepers if the king finds out, that they spent the night without food when these guys could have told him. So they finally go and they go and they explain, and they sent out the chariots to investigate. So everything's good, everything's kosher. Everyone goes out and raids the camp of the army, and to the point where food is cheap. Food in the city is now cheap, which is the meaning for a bushel of wheat for a shekel, or 2 bushels for a shekel, 2 bushels of barley for a shekel. And then the last bit sort of goes back to the beginning of the story. It actually begins in the previous chapter. You have a servant of the king who, the terminology doesn't say it very well, but you have to infer that what the servant said was a put down and a statement of disbelief. So the prophet said, okay, you'll see it with your eyes, but you won't get to have any of it. And so what we have at the bottom of our story here is the resolution of that the guy was sent out to mind the gate and got ran over and killed in the process. Okay. 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 All right, let's move on. Oops. Over here. Okay, so we have Luke 7, 18 to 35. So let's look at Luke 7. Seven, 18. Okay, and then get this back up. Okay. Okay. Yochanan's Talmidim informed him of all these things, talking about Yochanan HaMatbil. Because Yochanan called 2 of his Talmidim, sent, okay, you're the one we're looking for, or is there somebody else? And I like the response. Yeshua didn't say, yeah, it's me. He says, go back and report what you see, okay? And, the blind are seeing, the lame are walking, the leprosy being cleansed, the deaf are hearing, the dead are being raised, and the good news is being told to the poor. And so we know all this is, this is a description of the work of Mashiach. This is what Messiah is going to be doing. And so don't be ashamed of, being with him. Okay. Okay. And then after the messengers from Yochanan had gone, Yeshua expounds a little bit on who Yochanan was. Okay. What do you expect? Somebody who is, a reed swing in the breeze. In other words, somebody light and flexible. No, Yochanan was pretty hard. Okay. He was standing up against sin, and so he was proclaiming some pretty tough stuff. Okay. You got to straighten out, or God's not going to be doing well with you. Okay. You want somebody who's dressed up really nice, that politician look, that politician, polished delivery and performance. No, he was a prophet in the old model of saying it like it is. Okay, and so even though Yochanan denied that he was the one, nonetheless, Yeshua here identifies him as the one who will prepare the way of Mashiach. So it's kind of kind of an interesting thing. I know Yochanan said he wasn't, and I think that's just his way of not bringing fame for himself. Okay. Okay, then he says, and again, here we go at the end of this section. You guys are looking at Yeshua's complaining that, even the tax collectors who went to Yochanan for immersion acknowledged that God was right. Okay, but by not letting themselves be immersed by Yochanan, they nullified for themselves God's plan. And the Prushim are the forerunners of the modern Orthodox. Much of the same ideas, traditions, and attitudes are much the same. So when presented with Messiah, they deny Messiah. And it's the same even to today. Okay, so, and then Yeshua finishes by saying, how can I describe the people of this time? We made happy music, you didn't dance. You made sad music, you didn't cry. What's going to happen? How can we do this? Yochanan came in not eating regular foods and not drinking wine. He said he's got a demon. He's crazy. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking. You say he's a glutton and a drunkard, to hang out with someone who hangs out with tax collectors and sinners. Sinners, by the way, was a polite way of referencing the ladies who hang out with the tax collectors for a fee, if you get my drift. But then he says, the proof of wisdom is in all the kinds of people it produces. That's kind of a funny phrase, because there's a statement that Yeshua made that the wisdom is proved by its children, which is an interesting, in King's English, it's an interesting phrase. It's an interesting phrase. Okay, what does that mean? It basically means wisdom is born out in the results of following it. Okay, if you have wisdom and you pursue wisdom and you do wisdom, you will prosper. Okay, if you don't prosper, it's probably because you're not following wisdom. And when I say prosper, it's not necessarily financial wealth, but all the other good things that God gives us, like peace and satisfaction and joy. That's also prospering. Okay, not just money. Although that can be included in the mix, it's not exclusive of that. Okay. All right. I know you guys are having a discussion. You're not even listening to what I'm saying. You're free to talk, free to have your discussion. However, David, you're going to eventually have to recognize Yeshua is indeed one and the same with God. He'll eventually get there. Okay. Last part is in Matthew chapter 23, starting in verse 16. Oops. Let's see, where is that? Okay. Okay. This is an interesting tirade that Yeshua goes on. Make sure I have that just right. Yes, 23:16. Yes, good. Okay. Woe to you, blind guides! You say, if someone swears by the temple, he is not bound by his oath, but if he swears by the gold in the temple, he is bound. You blind fools, which is more important, the gold or the temple, which makes the gold holy? And you say, if somebody swears by the altar, he is not bound by his oath, but if he swears by the offering on the altar, he is bound. Blind men, which is more important, the sacrifice or the altar, which makes the sacrifice holy? Okay. What he's quoting here is actually it's recorded in the Mishnah. It's one of the rabbi arguments, saying that if you swear by the temple, you're not bound to keep that oath. But if you swear by the gift that you brought to the temple, you are. And it's actually quoted there in the Mishnah. So this is Pharisaic and even modern day Orthodox doctrine, which puts the man-made ahead of the godly. Okay, and this is one of those circumstances. It's actually in there. So Yeshua is taking to the Pharisees, and by extension modern Orthodox, the hypocrisy of putting their own wisdom and their own actions ahead of God. Okay. Verse 20. So someone who swears by the altar swears by it and everything on it, and someone who swears by the temple swears by it and the one who lives in it. And someone who swears by heaven swears by God's throne and the one who sits on it. So he's returning people to an understanding that there is a level of holiness that we are not doing. Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and Prushim! You pay your tithes of mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the weightier matters of the Torah: justice, mercy, trust. These are the things you should have attended to without neglecting the other. Blind guides straining in a net, meanwhile swallowing a camel. Okay, it's really interesting. In the middle of this is a backhanded compliment. He says, you Torah teachers and Prushim, you tithe out of your garden herbs. Okay? Now, you have to stop and think. Is there a commandment to tithe out of your garden herbs? You might want to argue that back and forth, or yes or no. But the way the question is worded, it sort of gives the impression that your garden vegetables was not your tithe. It was not part of your business. It was part of what you eat, with you and your family. It wasn't part of what you sell as business. And it sort of seems to play it out that way, because he's saying, you guys do this extra stuff, okay? But you've neglected the weightier matters of Torah, justice, mercy, and trust. Okay, these are the things you should have attended to without it in neglecting the others. So he's complimenting them on their exactness to tithe of their mint, dill, and cumin, their garden herbs. but there are more important things that you should have done without neglecting the others. So I guess you can argue that maybe you should be tithing out of your garden herbs, but the point being that this is, it's important to do things right by God and His commandments, but if you neglect the justice, the mercy, and the trust, the faith, then you're missing the point. If you are just doing actions without justice, without mercy, and without trust, then you are failing in your understanding of God, your relationship with God, and in your walk. Even if you're doing a lot of things that look like it's the right thing, okay? And so you have sort of a complement here, okay? It's a nice way of saying you something you're doing right here, but you're doing some other stuff really, really wrong, because there's a meaning, there's a reason why you do all this stuff. And your love for Hashem should be what is prompting you to do all the stuff that you do. Not that you can show off that you're tithing of your garden herbs. Okay, so these are the things you should have attended to without neglecting the others. It's a wonderful compliment, yet a smack at them for not doing it the right way. Blind guide, straining at a gnat, meanwhile swallowing a camel. Okay, there's a little bit of interesting explanation here, because also in the Mishnah it's recorded things you would do if you discover a bug in your food. Okay, what's kind of interesting, Torah says if a bug falls in your food, say in this case, and this is specific to the discussion in the Mishnah, if you have a jar of milk and a bug, a gnat, falls into the milk, you're permitted to strain it out. Torah says toss the whole thing, but according to Mishnah, you're permitted to strain it out. Okay? And so in this little detail, they're straining at that gnat. They're straining it out in order to gain the benefit of not having to throw out that milk. Meanwhile, swallowing a camel. And there's a lot of different ways that people try to explain this. The camel was a tiny gate in the city wall, or it was the name of a type of rope, a big thick piece of rope. If you just look at the plain text, you get the idea. A gnat's really, really tiny. A camel, by comparison, is huge. And so straining at the littlest tiny detail, meanwhile letting the big important details go by, big important commandments go by. That's within the context of what Yeshua is complaining about. Okay? Okay. All right. So I think that covers. There's one other thing. Little tag ending in 24 verses 30 and 31. Oh, I'm sorry. There's more on the stuff going on here. Okay, woe to you hypocritical Torah teachers! You build the tombs for the prophet and decorate the graves of the tzaddikim and say, "Oh, had we lived when our fathers did, we would have never taken part in killing them." In this you testify against yourselves that you are worthy descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Okay, what he's basically saying is, just as evil as that generation was when they killed the prophets, so are you guys, because of your hypocrisy. Okay, there's a little hint in the phrase "you build the tombs for the prophets," because in Hebrew you have a concept of building and destroying. When you build something, it means you're in favor of it and you're working with it. You're building it, in other words. Okay, and you see this in Shaul's in Romans. He's because it's translated in King's English that he builds the law. Okay, and so that idea is he's in favor of it. He's supporting it. Okay. And then the opposite then is if you're against it, you're destroying it. And you see this in the terminology in a couple different places throughout the Bible, that you have building and you have destroying, and this is where the terminology works. So he's saying that you make grand the prophets, the tombs of the prophets, and you whitewash them so they look beautiful, and you decorate the graves of the Sadukim, of the holy people. Okay. And they make that grand statement, oh, had we lived when our fathers did, we would never taken part in the killing of the prophets. And Yeshua says, hey, from your own words, you're the ones, you're the descendants of the ones who did these things. Okay? Go ahead and finish what your father started. It was a challenge to go ahead and kill Yeshua. It was directly to their face. It probably shocked them a lot. They weren't prepared to carry through on that quite at that moment, but they were later on. Okay, snakes son of snakes. This is Yeshua's continuing on explaining how evil that generation of the Prushim were, the Pharisees. How can you escape being condemned to Gehinnom? Now, the Hebrew is Gehinnom. King's English translates that as Gehenna. It simply means the valley of Hinnom, which at one time was somebody's home and property, but eventually became the garbage dump for the city of Jerusalem. And so what you have in the with the garbage dumps of that day, they didn't treat like we do with garbage dumps nowadays, where we cover over the daily dumpings with a bunch of dirt so that bad things don't happen. It doesn't stink, and you don't get infections and bugs and stuff running around. So what you have then is, of course, with all the natural stuff that goes on with garbage dumps, you get a lot of fire. Spontaneous combustion happens. And so the place reeks, it stinks, it's ugly, it's unsafe, it's yucky, and that becomes the standard picture of hell, the standard picture of the eternal punishment. There's nothing joyful about being in Gehinnom. And so that is the picture. And just like it's an eternal fire of things burning in there, it is the eternal fire as mentioned in Revelation. Okay? So he accuses the Prushim of his day of being just like the ones of old, who kill the prophets, have them executed as if they were criminals, and even looking a little forward to even somebody like Shaul, who was flogged in the synagogue, and even Shaul pursued the believers for a while from town to town. And so for everybody, it's gonna fall, all the guilt of all the innocent blood on these people who are rejecting Yeshua at this time. Okay, and so you have an interesting statement, and the answer to this is found in how the Bible is set up. From the blood of innocent Hevel, or Adam, to the blood of Zechariah ben Berechiah, the blood of Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, in English. Okay. The innocent blood of Adam we get, not Adam, but Cain. Abel. I'll get this right one of these days, Abel. But Zechariah ben Berechiah doesn't make sense, okay? And some people try to explain that he's talking about John the Baptist's father, okay, Zechariah. And they say the story that he was murdered because he was the father of John the Baptist. That's not what it is. The difficulty we have, if we don't remember that the order of books in the Tanakh is different than we have in the English Bible. The Tanakh ends with 2 Chronicles, and the last murder, the last killing in that Bible, in the Bible, in 2 Chronicles, is a guy named Zechariah ben Berechiah. So so the answer is, in the Tanakh that was in Yeshua's day, that was the end of the Bible. And so he's saying from beginning to the end of all history that's recorded in the Bible, this current generation is going to be worse. Okay, and it's going to be regarded as worse. Okay, and we know, and and Yeshua said, Yerushalayim, you kill the prophets. I often wanted to gather you just like a hen gathers her chicks, but you won't do it. Okay, God is abandoning your house to you, leaving it desolate. For I tell you, from now on you will not see me until you came. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And okay, and so it's now. It's one of the reasons that this phrase comes up. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai quite a lot in our songs. Okay. A little bit more to finish up. Let me see. Then 42, 23 to 24, 2. Okay, so we need to go forward one more chapter. Ooh, falafels for dinner. Are you inviting everybody? Okay, as Yeshua left, left the temple and was going away, his Talmidim came and called his attention to its buildings. But he answered them, see all these? Yes, I tell you, they will be totally destroyed. Not a stone will be left standing. Okay, of course, is prophetic because that's exactly what happened. And we have a historical record of even the flooring stones were torn apart because, contrary to the Roman general's orders, the Roman legion that took the temple burned down the temple, and all the gold that was in the temple melted into the cracks of the flooring stones, and thus in order to get the gold out, you had to pull out all those stones. So everything was completely torn apart. Okay. And then one last little bit, verses 30 and 31. Okay. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the tribes of the land will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with tremendous power and glory. He will send out his angels with a great shofar, and they will gather together his chosen people from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Okay. So this is the return of Mashiach. We're going to... eventually, when we get back to this section of Revelations, which comes into explaining this in better detail, we'll talk about exactly when and the circumstances for this. Okay. Okay. Any questions, comments, rebukes? I know we had a pretty furious conversation going on, but it seems to have calmed down a little bit. Okay, I know it's going to probably be some delay before I get to see your comments, but questions, comments, rebukes on anything. I know double reading like this is extra long, but let's go ahead and get back to our Parsha if we can. Okay, any other questions, comments, rebukes?
On the topic.
Hmm?
Is it on the topic?
Yeah. Ellen says, on the topic. It's okay. All right. Let me ask you this. Being that this was a double portion, that seemed like a rather long reading to go through. And I was wondering, since we have 2 more double portions in the next 3 weeks. Do we want to cut back on the reading as far as our discussion is concerned? We should read both portions on our own, but just for the sake of easing the discussion, do we want to ease off maybe some of the Haftarah readings, or cut it down to if you look at your Flame Foundation reading list, you'll notice that for next week, Achrei Mot and Kedoshim, you have the Haftarah readings are cut back to the reading in Amos, and you also have Ezekiel in there. But you also have both Brit HaChadashah readings. Those are relatively short and shouldn't be too difficult. Or if you want to trim those back as far as the discussion online is concerned, because this was kind of a long day this way. Oops. Keep wanting to reach in the wrong direction. So what you think? Kelly, anti-Messiah. Okay. All right. Any questions, comments, rebukes on the reading? Any thoughts with regard to trimming down the portions when it comes to the discussion section? Okay. If you guys have nothing else to add, then we can close down. Don't forget all the YouTube stuff to subscribe, like, hit the bell for Ellen's laughing at me. Hit the bell for notifications. Yeah, add comments when we get to when this gets posted. You can put comments underneath, and then yeah, that's basically it. Okay. Okay, we can handle. I'm kind of half inclined, but for some reason, the way this was rather long portions in and of themselves, and so the putting them both together seemed kind of long. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't completely boring or tiring you guys by doing it. Okay. Well, the 3 most important people I have to please here just spoke up. No, just kidding. All of you I need to please. So. Oh, I have no idea why it didn't populate. It's okay.
Sorry, Mama, my screen is different.
You have something different? Should have you should have the chat on one side and the Matityahu on the other. Torah is not for wimp. Amen. Okay. Okay, good. When you have a long day, Art and I can join you. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not quite catching what you mean on that. It's sorry. Yeah, I already stumbled through Acre Mode. I don't know what I was going through. My eye kept going to Acre Mode, but when I went to the right side of the page, I was in the right location. So it's one of the joys of 1.9 not being 100% still. I can blame it on that anyways. Yeah, I'll blame it on that. Yeah, that's right, Gil. Yeah, stay at home. We need all the fellowship we can get. Absolutely, Gil. We need to spend more time together anyways. They're not? Okay, that I'm not sure why. As far as I know, no one's being blocked. We haven't blocked anybody. And, I'm not even...
That's because our thing is delayed.
Well, the delay wouldn't be blocking the text from coming in, would it?
Yeah, because we popped out the chat.
Yeah.
So when they see it on the screen like this,
Yeah.
it's delayed because they're seeing it with our video too.
Okay. Okay. The way Abigail explained it, and it makes sense, that there's a 30-second or a 1-minute delay from the time I say something to the time you hear it. And it could be if with the chat moving so fast, by the time it populates the screen, and since the video seems to be jogging a little bit, it's not running so smooth. It's jumping, and you're missing some things. So hopefully we'll get this fixed and we'll have smooth video next week, or maybe by Wednesday for the Galatians study. Yeah, if somebody knows how to make a YouTube live chat run smoothly, because we're getting warnings from YouTube that our connection isn't fast enough or big enough, and that shouldn't be the case because we're getting really good speed. It's just that we're not getting it could, and I'm not sure. Maybe there's just I just need to run a hard wire and not rely on the Wi-Fi in the computer to link with the Wi-Fi that's down in the garage. That may be an option to try. Anyways, that's a thought. Yeah, I can see. To me, it looks like I'm reading everything going by, but if the video's jogging, it could be that the screens are. I mean, the text is jumping rather than scrolling. Okay, so this is what happened. We were watching a quick video. Barbara, you had mentioned this. He had mentioned going to the low latency setting, but I saw the button for ultra low, so maybe we should try that. And the bit rate needs to be at the high setting, but he was saying it needs to be at about 1,000. And so I think what happened is we got some bad advice there. So we can fix that, and we can give that a try and see if that helps. Shalom, Elsa. Oh, you're just in time for us to close for the day, but glad to see you.
It'll pop up later.
Yeah, because what you're seeing is coming through off the YouTube. So I'm seeing mine before it goes out.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh, a 4-minute delay, what we're typing and what we're
4-minute delay?
That's a long minute delay, 4 minutes. Wow.
Wow.
It needs to go up, as the guy says 3,500, 28 to 35.
He said no, he wanted it around 1,000.
No, you said that the guy said 3,500, but you said on your YouTube live it recommended 1,000.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, in the ODS was saying that it said that they recommend a setting of 1,000.
No.
It was in the ODS setup. So, or was it YouTube?
No,
maybe it was the
read
YouTube.
YouTube said 1,000.
Okay, I'm sorry, my mistake. Yeah, sorry, I got that backwards. Okay.
That's okay. We can figure it out next week.
I don't know if we can try.
We can not right now. We can
so
fix
they
it
can
after.
see it.
No, it has to
Okay.
end it.
Okay, Shava, you're saying that the chat is at regular speed, but there's a big delay in the. I mean the video is at real time, but the
What are you saying?
chat is at 30 to 60 second delay.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So I'm missing some of your comments. Maybe that's a good thing. No, just kidding.
They pop up
Wow.
later.
They do pop up, but they're
Well,
just out of order.
Yeah.
Or how do they?
They
Okay.
come up. Someone said that it's late, but they pop up slowly. Anyways.
Okay. So let's see if we can reset the settings and we can get something that's a little more useful. Okay. Well, that's odd.
We can fix it.
Okay, we'll give it a shot. We'll see if Wednesday works better for us. Okay. Okay. You asked about what is the abomination of desolation. The abomination of desolation. It's you have a predecessor comment from what Yeshua said, or a statement when in Daniel, when the evil one sets himself up in the temple and declares himself to be God. That is identified as the abomination of desolation. And that phrase is reused also in Revelation, which tells us then that we need to be. I'm sorry, was it Yeshua? We can clue on that terminology and give us a clue as to what we're looking for. So the thing that sets himself up in Jerusalem invades the temple or tabernacle, whatever is running, causes the daily sacrifices to cease, and declares himself to be God. And that should be a fairly clear indication of who is that evil one. And it's defined as the abomination of desolation. Because I think in Hebrew the phrase is more like the abomination that brings desolation, because somebody standing in the holy place declaring to be God would defile the temple, and you'd have to cleanse it before you go back to work with it. Except at that point it signals the last of the days before Messiah's return. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or rebukes? Pay my cable bill. Why? Yeah, anti-Messiah, right, Kelly? Yeah, the cable bill's paid up. I even did a speed test last night just to make sure we were getting good, and we were getting really good speed, up around 50 kilobytes per second, which is more than enough to run this. Because full speed video is what 3 to 5 kilobytes per second. So we should be fine. So I think it's in the settings of the program, and we just have to go back and fix those settings again, and make it work for us. Okay.
Oh, really? Okay, hold on. Let me see.
Okay, I think we're. What are we doing?
Did you want to talk to Jason? It does gaming, so he can.
Oh.
Do it